This is really exciting. I've worked with both these folks for a while, and I was really excited to get them to come in from mostly all over the world to be here today. So I really think you'll be interested in this. So no mind is an island, and I think the whole point here is that we are all co-thinkers. Humans do not think alone. They think together. They think with things. They think with artifacts. They think with people. They think with each other. So how do we think about collective cognition? So the idea of no mind as an island is that there are machine learners that we've been talking a lot about, and then there are human learners that we know all about because we're all one of those human learners. I don't see robots here today. And then there are environments, and those environments are slowly becoming more and more smart. If you walk into an Amazon Go store, it's a robot. You walk in, you pick something up, you walk out, it connects back to the supply chain, it orders stuff, it brings it in. It's a robot. You're walking inside of a robot. IKEA recently worked with Yves Bahar to develop basically a robotic whole apartment that the whole bed lifts and goes in the ceiling and the thing opens up and closes and stuff like that. And so we are slowly getting AI out into the world because we've got these things. And our teams in the future, and I drew a little robot in there, are starting to become agentic. We might be having multiple teammates or multiple people in our homes that aren't people, they're beings, they're different kinds of things. And so the notion here is, what if I could, instead of being shaped by some corporate entity, like Amazon's smart speaker just wants to try to sell me things, but it's in my home, it's shaping what I do, or the TV or the couch in the future, or maybe robot children. What if I could broadcast my intentionality? What if I could actually say, I actually care about this. I want to build this tool set. I want to build this mindset. I want to build this skill set. And just like Mr. Miyagi was actually sending the kid off to go learn how to wax a car, secretly he was learning how to block moves. So how might we use a little misdirection and fun in that process, but apply science to it? And so these folks are going to tell us about actually why that's now becoming completely possible. So here's a little imaginary app that I want you to look at. So you go to your Which watch and you choose which capacity you want to tune in next. And if you have a watch in it, you can actually detect all sorts of things from your watch because you have sensors. And if you click on something like a Mac, you've got eye tracking that can look at pupil dilation. If you look at something more advanced, augmented reality stuff, you can actually see what other things and people you're looking at and things like that. And you've got kind of a juice meter, how much is in your gas tank, and how fast you're hitting the gas, your accelerator. And you can see where your cognition is. So we don't have any tools for measuring cognition. We have time management, we have watches, we have calendars. What if I could actually tune in and say, I want to build creative muscles. I want to build curiosity muscles. I want to build productivity muscles. Maybe I'm a procrastinator and I'm not good at productivity. Maybe I want to build collaboration. Maybe I want to play with, divergent collaboration or convergent collaboration. Maybe I want to choose those things, and then I want to enlist. I want to broadcast my intentionality to other things around there. So I could click on enlistment and say, I want to broadcast it to my friends. I want to broadcast it to my places. I want to broadcast it to my things. Maybe I'm trying to lose weight, and I want Waymo to not go right by the drive-thru for McDonald's because I keep eating those damn McGriddles. So how might we think differently about this? And so if you think of these as beings. Anthropic released this thing called Model Context Protocol, but that was mostly for the AI. What if we had a being context protocol? And it was a public approach that could be it. And you can actually go on GitHub now and see the being context protocol that says these are beings, and we want to broadcast these things, and we want to also protect them with privacy-preserving methods. So what happens if we actually did that? And the reason all of this matters is context is decisive. Kay Foster, who was the CHRO for Johnson & Johnson for a number of years and one of my mentors, she basically says, if you can't change the person, change the environment and you'll get different results. And she saw this with leaders around the world. Context decides for us. We think we're all deciding inside of our head, but we're not. Context is decisive. For a little background, I used to work at a lab that had cognitive psychologists, anthropologists, ethnographers, and other folks, and we built places like this. This was my lab out of Carnegie Mellon. It was called Maya. It was most advanced yet acceptable, but we experimented over 35 years on a phenomenon called where it is what it is. That means the space remembers for you. And so you can actually wind the clock back and actually know stuff, and people can remember 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 things in physical space for free. So can ants, so can squirrels. They go find their nuts after they buried them months later. We don't have to do extra processing for it. So where it is what it is powerful, although most people don't understand it. And it's a cognitive power. We wrote a book about this. We wrote a book about the larger scale implications of what happens when we have trillions of computational devices. Your body has 50 trillion cells, so we know it's possible to have a complex information system that doesn't have to reboot every month. But nature kind of laughs at the way we build things today, because we could actually do so much more. Now, when I joined Autodesk in the office of the CTO, they were doing this thing in 2014 called generative design, where you would just define the goals, constraints, and obstacles, and the relationships. And it was goal-directed. You set the goals, and then it generated things. This was the HackRod project. We captured 4 billion data points every afternoon in the Mojave Desert. From EEG on the driver, that's Mouse's head. He's a Guinness record-winning racer who drives for Need for Speed and Born Identity, to evolving the chassis, and the chassis evolved to be 30% lighter. We captured tons of data, and during the process, Max actually was part of our team and developed something crazy where the actual lid of the car had proprioception, using one thread of fiber optics that you could touch, and it knew every single newton of force you were touching it on, by weaving it with a robotic system that I'd never seen before. And then we said, what if you could do that with physical infrastructure? So we worked with these folks at MX3D who had a napkin sketch of robots building a bridge in Amsterdam. And so they wove this out of stainless steel. This is 3D printed out of stainless steel in Amsterdam. We used the Turing Institute to censor it all up so that it became a living organism. And then we actually allowed people to have privacy-preserving data to see what it looked like. We tested this out at Eindhoven's big design festival, and then we actually deployed it to the red light district in Amsterdam. And we tested it, and we had a QR code so everybody could actually see what public infrastructure looked like when it comes alive. And so we had visitors testing it out. We could actually measure the stresses on the bridge, but also when were people going to bars and what was going on. But how could we do that to help the actual bars and the companies and the situations around it? And so that ended up, when we installed it, the princess came over, and you can see that she didn't actually get to cut the ribbon. We had a robot cut the ribbon just for fun. So she pushed a button because, we had to automate it with AI. But what was really interesting was we had these systems so you could actually see different things going on, but anonymize the people and allow you to detect all sorts of sensors. And then another project at Autodesk, we actually built a living laboratory makerspace where instead of taking an Instructable and you had to follow this Instructable, it would light up the bin that you wanted to use. It would show you the display that you needed in context. And we saw a massive drop in the need for experts to jump in and make sure you didn't poke an eye out with a drill bit or solder something like your hand. And so we saw dramatic things happening when we actually embedded intelligence into space in context to help people learn. And that became important. So then Neta joins me as my boss. We joke that we're not sure whose intern was who, but Neta was actually working on getting a PhD at Cornell, and she said, what if we could measure cognitive usage? And she worked with me, because I'm a senior advisor at BCG, to publish a paper with a partner there around what would happen if we wasted cognition, if cognition was strip mined from us. The same way we sort of strip mine the fields and the worlds of resources. There are resources in our heads, and it would be a really shame to have Silent Spring 2.0. And Neta and I built this prototype where you could actually look at the things that were high consumption and actually built your capacity. So neurons that fire together wire together, you get smarter. And those that were depleting our capacity and what was happening. And if you look at all the 192 cognitive biases, these kind of get in the way. There's a beautiful example of cognitive biases. It's called the continued influence effect. When I ask people how quickly you can learn a new thing when you're more than 4 years old, they think it's going to take a while because, we're older, but 4-year-olds can learn a lot. This is a backward bike. It's a wonderful example of the continued influence effect. A great guy, he's 40 years old, he's an engineer, he's got a YouTube channel called Smarter Every Day. Somebody said, this will be fun. They built him a backward bike. When you turn the handlebars one way, the wheel goes the other way, if you look closely. And so he said, wait, make one for my kid. He's 6 years old. He just learned how to ride his bike 3 years ago. Great. How long do you think it took the 6-year-old to learn how to ride a backward bike? Anybody have a guess? Huh? 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Great. How long do you think it took the dad to learn how to ride the bike? They went out to the park every day, and they tried riding so they could actually do this. How long? Never an hour. Okay. It took him 8 months every day for them going into the park and trying to ride. He couldn't get more than about a half a meter. It took the kid 2 weeks every morning, sleeping every night, because that's when you regenerate cognition, to learn how to ride it. When he tried to ride a normal bike, he couldn't ride a normal bike. He went to the capital of bicycle riding, that place called Amsterdam, and he tried riding a normal bike. You can watch it on the YouTube, and he couldn't do it because all the vines had grown back into the brain. That's the continued influence effect. We think we can learn things quickly, we can't. So Neta introduces me to a lot of this stuff. She ends up building this kind of information architecture for beings, and we get to this point of saying, wait a second, we should publish this. And so Marco Annunziata publishes a paper about it, talks about cognition facts just like nutrition facts, starts to think about what your cognitive depletion and your cognitive regeneration is. Forest bathing is very popular in Japan. It means going out in the forest because it actually helps you with different kinds of phytochemicals in the forest. And you could look at your gas tank as well as your accelerator pedal over the course of it. So Neta, you end up building all this stuff. Cognitive measurement, cognitive load, physiological, you find all these things. Tell me a little bit more about what the heck do you mean when we say cognitive load and that we don't have this stuff?
Thank you, Anne. Great question. So I want you to think for a second about your computer. When you have 40 different tabs opened, what happens? It starts slowing down, right? If you keep working with more tabs even, it's going to freeze. Eventually, your computer will crash, right? Unlike a computer where we can just buy a new one with better processor, we can update the software and it will solve the problem, the human mind cannot do that. We pretty much have the same brain as we had 10,000 years ago. But think about our life today. How different it is than it was 10,000 years ago. Our brain is not meant to work the way we are doing today. The information we constantly need to process is crazy and too much for us. So we need to do something about it, right? We need to adapt. We cannot just upgrade our brain. It doesn't work. So when I'm talking about cognitive workload, I'm basically talking about the human RAM memory, the one that is in charge of processing information. Now, when we're talking about regenerative and depleting cognition, what we mean by that is those activities that requires a lot of thought into them, decision-making, right? We need to do it every day. We do it even in our sleep, but there's activities like sleeping that helps us recover it, right? So imagine you could see that your brain, just the same way we can see that we have 20% on our phone, imagine we can see it for our own brain, and then go and recharge.
And by the way, it's very personal. So when we were working together, can I tell them that we have slightly different brains? So Neta has ADHD and dyslexia. And so that can be really challenging. Her high school teacher said she'll never go to college, although she just finished her PhD at Cornell. Woo! All right. And she's starting a company for this very purpose because she cares so much. But the thing is that I could read books for hours. I love books. I read them all day long. I feel like I get energy from them. She has to read the papers. She read over like 400, I think, papers. 600 papers about the science of this and how we measure it. She could only do that early in the morning, and it would deplete her the whole day. And so we were actually looking at this has to be personal. It has to be owned by you, and it has to be privacy preserving.
Correct, and it also keeps changing throughout our life. It's a continuous thing because workload is not only affected by who we are and our neurodivergence differences, it's also about what did we eat in the morning? Did we eat at all? How did we sleep? If you don't sleep during the night, your day is going to be difficult. I'm sure you can all relate to that. Everything is much different.
You have a whole section on chrono things like when you're adolescent, you actually need to start later in the day. And they've seen if you just move the daytime at 12-year-old kids to 9 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock, they do like 20% better on tests. But when you're like 70 or 60, I'm 61, you kind of are an early riser. And so you actually do have different things. And so each of us is different, and they are not fixed.
True. And also, the situation we're at, our huge effect on it. Example, imagine we had 1,000 people in this room. the amount of noise is going to make it all much harder because you'll need to filter all the distraction, all this information that is not important, it's noise, in order to focus on what you're trying to think and process. It's not just the noise, it's the lighting. For example, artificial light compared to natural light. We have plants in the room. There's so many different things that affect it. And that's one of the things I developed in my dissertation, is a framework that I call it the contextual workload framework, where I mapped all the research done on things that are affecting our workload and different type of tasks and different situational factors, and also the human situation. What are we experiencing? Are we depressed? Do we have anxiety? All those things really, really affect your ability of processing information. And so what I'm doing, and Mickey is helping me do that, I turned my frameworks and theories into practice, and we're building a platform. We call it Personal Cognitive Intelligence Platform, and that is this data layer that only focuses on our cognition and our ability to process information and basically make decisions.
So I feel like this is a whole industry that's missing, the same way we have now an industry for day timers and watches and clocks and calendars and stuff, but we don't have it for cognitive management. And instead we get dark patterns that folks strip mine our cognition, turn it into a business model, which feels dangerous. Neta, you gave me a slide that I'd love you to talk about. Tell me about this cognitive risk pyramid.
Okay, when I had to transform my ideas, not just from a good idea and tools that I developed, I already have the algorithm, I had to also sell it to the business world, right? Making a startup. And so I started to think, okay, how will I describe it from the business side of the point? And I started to talk about it from the consequences of risk overload.
So this is consequences on the vertical axis.
Yeah. So when I mean consequences, I'm meaning what happens when you are overloaded. And that is not industry specific. Every industry is going to experience it. It's not just one type of job, but the consequences will differ from one to another. So for example, knowledge workers, the results will be, they'll make mistakes. Their performance will be less good. It will cost money. But if we're thinking about caretaker for elderly or long-haul drivers, the results of overload will be more accidents and injuries. But if we look at the top, the ones that it's really high risk, those are air traffic control, emergency services, military. What happens when they experience overload? How many plane collisions have we heard about in the last few months?
Yeah.
I live in New York. We had several of those.
So these are big consequences, and also you before you, in your undergrad in Israel, you were also an Air Force military commander in charge of boot camps and helping other folks come in to do this stuff. You've seen it, and the implications for pilots, for air traffic, et cetera. I want to move to Max, because Max, you've seen a lot of this stuff, and I want to get your sense on things, because you and I have played together, but you've also been exploring neuroscience for quite a while, but for an entirely different reason. You're sort of this... You're this physicist mathematician, and when I met Max, he had already helped build 80% of the robots that wove the very first carbon fiber airplane in the world, the Boeing Dreamliner. He'd already put little, basically FPGA processors on the heads of these. He already helped build a lander for Europa with JPL. He'd already done this kind of stuff, and I'm like, Max, what are you up to right now?
Thank you for having me here, so it's spectacular. So for me, the quest has been always, I wanted to recreate a synthetic brain, no? Because I think, and I'm going to say that, and at least for myself, sometimes we are very arrogant, okay? So in essence, we are living in this physical world, but we don't know how to communicate. And for me, a robot is not just an anthropomorphic car, it's as well a city. A city is a robot that we don't know how to talk with, okay? And so, for example, when I had to build the Dreamliner, so the first airplane made in plastic, okay, with a new material, there was no data, there was no experience, because everything was done in aluminum. So all the typical AI that has to use massive amount of data to do something, okay, was out of the window, because it was not even possible to apply it. The other thing that was important for me was important to really remove the arrogance and start to ask the machine, what do you think about that design? What do you really think? What can you do? What can you tell me?
Does the machine even have proprioception, the way I can tell where my arm is at? And,
Exactly. Then you discover that, you are asking the machine to do something, but you are not even listening, or you are not even empowering the machine to go through that experience. And so what I'm doing now, I'm actually empowering the machine with this, what you call neocortex. Okay, so I'm a huge passionate about neuroscience, and I'm doing some work in that direction. But certainly the human brain has three major levels, no? So the perception here, and then you have the deep side of the brain that control all your capacity of moving.
So you gave me this slide, which I think is fascinating. He's pulling in all these sensing from this side of it.
Time series is not anymore the Kool-Aid of a pixel, no? Well, I like to joke and I say we're living in the age of the Kool-Aid of the pixel and the GPU.
Kool-Aid of pixel. Everyone thinks they can do it with a camera.
Yeah, exactly. Everything, as long as you have a pixel and then a bunch of GPU, we're okay. We're going to solve everything. We can actually synthesize a human being with a bunch of pixels in a regression model.
So that's kind of this cartoon. This is what you see everyone else doing. It's sort of, you're trying to do the imitation game. Yeah.
So one of the things that's fascinating to me when I give the example is you go to a shop floor, no? And then you are asking a welder, okay, how do you know? How do you know that one is a good welder? And then the guy is going to respond to you, not because I'm looking the welding, because you're going to get blind, because I'm listening the sound. I'm listening the sound. So I'm asking you, where the heck the sound is in the pixel or in the video? None of that, okay? None of that is actually there. But the human brain is actually absorbing time series constantly. If I want to talk a moment about mathematics, so it's a signal in time, the light wave, the sound wave, the pressure wave, the motional wave.
So that's more like this picture. It's all this stuff. And you're constantly integrating these. And you're constantly feeling these things and integrating them together.
Finally, I have a lab here in San Francisco, and my robots are actually responding to me. When I'm saying responding, they are actually building data center, they are building car, they are building airplane. Now I want to teach to them to augment the human, to move from manufacturing that is perceived like a job to a career, because that will open up a completely different breakthrough in the human life quality that we are observing today. But long story short, if you reverse that, and rather than teaching through a book, and rather to go with this misconception that we have been forever pushed, okay, instead really learning that by immersing the people, the Montessori method, okay, so learning the people, immersing them in the experience, having them to absorb this time series data, I guarantee you, even an 8 years old will learn. You know why I know? Because the welding example that I said before, okay, the welders are one of the most conservative, let's say, operator in the field that you can find. They don't want to change anything, okay? You talk to them, I want to introduce some AI. They say, okay, the door is there, you can go out, okay? They don't want to even listen. But in the moment that I show that the technology is not removing his job, it's giving an opportunity to talk and to learn new tricks, and both of them are actually growing, you are moving to a different level. And so in that point, I saw him actually even growing his capacity, something that he was never able to break through before, now he does, okay? And then I want to close with the example of the city that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you are walking.
And so this is sort of looking ahead. I just asked him, hey, we're right here in Union Square, and what if you could have a neocortex like what he's built? Because he's taken any robot off the shelf, and in one day, it actually learns itself through a special training rig. And he's basically sending it to Montessori. I said, what if you could run the neocortex on Union Square? What if we could actually do that?
So for example, you see all the light here? Each one of these lights is actually creating a neuroplasticity on us, okay? It's unavoidable. It's exactly what it does, because the brain at the end of the day is an incredible chemical electrodynamic transducer. And it's funny, because you talk with the neuroscientists, most of them, they don't even know the Maxwell equation, which to me, is what the heck? I mean, you're studying the brain, you don't even know the Maxwell equation? You should actually question.
Can you tell he's a mathematician and a physicist? Yeah.
The one that combines the electrical field with the magnetic field, okay, which in essence dictates exactly what's going on.
So Max, later today we're going to have Ben Davis, who like literally takes over the whole city with awe, with lights, and you just talked about it, lights. Neta, you did too.
Actually, empower right now in this room, increase your capacity to listen what I'm saying and digest my Italian accent much better. Simply because of the light around you, okay? Simply because of the light around you. If in top of that, when we're going to add the sound, then it's spectacular, because most of the augmentation of the human mind is through these two waves, okay? The light and the sound. that will increase your...
But it sort of sneaks right past us, too, because it actually, so all children, all humans are learning every second. The question is what we're learning. And so that's the big potential here. And I just want to set up our next kind of speakers, and I want you to pay attention the whole rest of the day. If you ever get a chance to go to Max's lab, you should. It's amazing, because I've watched him take a random robot, and in an afternoon, it suddenly has proprioception without locking down things, and it can actually go plant chips and do things never before trained. So you have to see this, because it doesn't even use a GPU, which is pretty wild. Peter, what's coming up next is my question.
By the way, thank you for kind of bringing that up. What Max just talked about, put a neocortex in Union Square, it's actually a project City Science is doing with the mayor. The problem is people are interested in public safety perceptions. We know crime is down, but people are like, do I feel good? Is it dark enough? Are there enough people on the street? Am I worried? And you kind of want to understand this stuff because you want to manage it. And one way of doing it is you ask people to respond with like a Net Promoter Score. How do I feel? And Max is like, we can sense everything, and then we can also respond, you know, and if we understand people's emotions, do we have an ambassador who are these roving street people go out? Do we send music out? Do we use light? Do we use smell, sound? And so the idea is to, if you have a sense for what's going on in a city, how do you respond?
But Peter, City Science, too, is all about sort of pilot, experimentation, things like that. Recently, I've been working at Tufts Research Lab, and they've developed these patches that do micromolar accurate, as good as a blood sample, paper patches. So what if we did a pilot in Union Square with people wearing the patches, and we could learn interleukin-6 and CRP and pH, and if your oxytocin is higher or lower, with a paper patch,
and
we could learn things, which goes right back to what Max just talked about sensing what's really happening. There are a whole set of things we haven't even learned
So
yet.
this is the possibility frontier when kind of physical and medical and sensing media, and of course, a bunch of ethical questions here. But I wanted to thank you guys for bringing that up.